Suspension training theory. So the objective of this presentation are to show how to manipulate the intensity or stability of different exercises and to discuss parameters such as body angle, lever length and the pendulum swing force. So intensity. There are a few methods to increase the intensity of suspension system exercises. And note, not all of these can be accomplished by every exercise. This could be accomplished by increasing the lever length, changing the body angle from more vertical to more horizontal, varying the pendulum swing force, using additional load, and also leaving the ground. And we'll look at each of these in more detail. So lever length to begin with. So altering the lever length would involve increasing or decreasing the distance between the handles and the point of contact with the floor. So here's the first example. We look at the prone plank. Initially, just again, if you get an idea of the distance between the handles and where the hands are touching the ground there, as we push the feet back, so the arms are in essence reaching upwards, that distance is now increased, and that significantly increases the lever arm of that exercise and therefore the overload, in this case for the prone plank, on the muscles on the anterior core. For an exercise like the overhead tricep extension, everything else being equal, so the angle of the body, etc., this can be performed on the knees, as we see there, or on the feet. And again, just looking at the distance between where the knees are touching the ground or where the feet are touching the ground, that'll give you an indication about how hard that exercise is. So body angle, well, moving incrementally from a more vertical body position to a more horizontal body position will significantly increase the intensity of the exercise because of an increased effective mass being used. What that means is when you're in a very vertical position, you're effectively lifting less of your body weight. When you're in a more horizontal position, you're lifting a lot more of your own body weight. So exercises like the row, biceps curl, chest press, etc., these will all get harder as the body moves into a more horizontal position and when the suspension system straps become more vertical. So if we're performing a row, for example, and you're facing the straps, walk your feet forwards so the body starts to lean back into a more horizontal position. That'll make the exercise harder. If you're in a chest press where you're facing away from the system, again, walking your feet backwards now, again, so that puts the body in a more horizontal position, will again make that exercise more difficult. So here we see this shown with a few kind of variations. So this would maybe our starting point for doing a body weight row. And we can see the angle that the body is positioned now in relation to the vertical. So maybe 30, 45 degrees or so. And we're lifting a proportion of our body weight when we're in this position. Now, two ways of making this more difficult. One would be to keep the feet exactly where they are, but just to lengthen the straps. And this would cause, again, the body to adopt a more horizontal position. So if you imagine that those straps have lengthened now, and the body is now leaning back to where that other line is, that greater angle means you're lifting more of your body weight off the ground. Take us back to the start position. The other way of adjusting that intensity and the amount of weight you're lifting is going to be to move the feet forwards. So if you imagine that the feet have moved forward to where those two lines meet, again, you're going to be leaning further back. The handles or the straps haven't changed in length, but they have changed the angle. So if you look on where the red arrow is now, they'd have walked downwards to that position. So again, you're going to be lifting more of the weight, your body weight with each row, and therefore the intensity will have increased. And for every kind of exercise where you're generally doing it in a more standing position, this is the way that you're going to be increasing the intensity of the exercise with your own body weight. One of the ways to make it harder is to look at how the kind of pendulum swing force may affect certain exercises. So for exercises where the body is in a horizontal position, you can't obviously get any more horizontal. You're already in a kind of horizontal position. Now, whether you're prone or supine, so this could be prone exercise like a jackknife, it could be a supine exercise like a leg curl. If the body's already in a horizontal position, then we can use what we call the pendulum swing force to either assist or resist the body in order to make the exercise easier or harder respectively. So although the body mass, the body angle, and the lever length are all identical, simply adjusting the start position, i.e. the position of the handles in relation to the anchor point, this is going to allow for a progression of resistance. And this is what makes these exercises, although you may do these exercises with other equipment like a stability ball, so you can do a jackknife with a stability ball or a leg curl with a stability ball. Unlike using a stability ball, you can't actually easily vary or progress resistance incrementally. With a suspension system you can do, and that's what makes it unique from other equipment. So for horizontal exercises, like the jackknife as we see below, the line of pull is horizontal. So as we see with the arrows, as the handles with the feet within them are pulled closer to the base of support, in this case the hands, that line of pull is in the horizontal plane. So you bring your knees upwards to kind of towards your arms or towards your chest, and you see that's the line that we're pulling in. So to vary it, well, when the handles are directly below the anchor, as you see they are with the red arrow there, at the start position, if you were just to kind of release those handles, they wouldn't swing anywhere. So they wouldn't swing backwards, they wouldn't swing forwards, they'd just stay in exactly the same position. And what that means is there's neither going to be assistance nor additional resistance when you're doing the exercise, because there's no natural pendulum swing force at the kind of start position. Now if you were to move yourself backwards, as we see here, so that the feet are on the far side of the anchor point, and again, if you imagine that the feet weren't in it and you were just holding it with your hands and you released it, those handles would naturally want to swing forwards, as we see with that little arrow next to his feet. That's the direction that the handles naturally want to move and naturally want to swing. So in this case, when you're doing the exercise where you're pulling your knees towards your chest, you're pulling it in the same direction as that natural swing. And that helps, effectively, that natural pendulum swing is going to help the handles move towards the hands, i.e. the line of pull that you're using for that exercise, and that effectively makes the exercise easier. Now if we were to move in the opposite direction, so you move your hands forwards so that the feet are on the near side of the anchor point, so those kind of two arrows at the top, if you imagine that that's our start position, we take a few steps forward with the hands, so then we're going to get into the where the position where the second arrow is. The natural pendulum swing is now moving against or in the opposite direction to the line of pull, and this means that the exercise is going to be harder. And we can see this here with these two arrows. We've taken a couple of steps forward. You're trying to pull the knees towards your chest, so looking at the image here, you're trying to pull the suspension system to the right. The natural pendulum swing wants to pull it to the left, so effectively it's resisting you in the direction you're trying to pull, and that's what makes the exercise harder. So as a general rule of thumb, as we see with these arrows here, if you were to start with your feet on the far side of the anchor point, that's going to be the easiest position because the pendulum swing wants to help you. If the feet are directly below the anchor, then it's moderate intensity because it's neither helping you nor resisting you. Move your feet to the right, to the other side, then the pendulum swing wants to resist you. So that's the hardest position to get into when you're doing these horizontal exercises. So the intensity of many exercises can also be increased by adding additional load to the body weight. So commonly used equipment or methods would be dumbbells, kettlebells, sandbags or steel bells, and all of these are free weights, and we would need to hold these in one hand. And generally you want to pick a piece of equipment where you can easily hold it in one hand. So yeah, theoretically you could use a barbell, could use a Viper, but single-handed it's not that comfortable to really hold, so we tend to keep it to more exercises or equipment where the load is quite compact. So dumbbells, kettlebells, sandbags, steel bells all work pretty well for that. The other way is not to hold it, but to have it on the body in a weighted vest. Again, you can increase the load within the weighted vest, and that effectively would make your body weight heavier and thereby increase the intensity. Now, apart from the weighted vest, all of the others will need to be held, like we said, in a single-handed grip. So this single-handle grip would also need to be adopted on the suspension system to facilitate that. So here we can see some visual examples of using a few different pieces of equipment. We have a kind of sumo squat, holding a kettlebell in between the legs, or a normal squat, holding the kettlebell in a rack position in the top images. From more of a mobility perspective, we can do like a Bulgarian split squat, which is the exercise at the bottom, where we're holding just a battle rope above the head. So really not really trying to increase the load significantly. That is more just for helping to aid mobility. Now, the last way of actually increasing the intensity can be by leaving the ground. So for drills where the goal is to stimulate the muscle spindles, then increasing the speed of the exercise can help facilitate that. So we'd make the exercise dynamic enough so that the body leaves the ground, and that will help to increase the ground reaction forces upon landing and also the subsequent muscle activation. So in this case, we're doing like a reverse crossover squat. By adding a little jump into it, that will increase the overload and the intensity of that particular exercise. So stability. This is where we get a lot of confusion between stability, intensity, or just challenging. So in addition to making the exercise more intense, which is effectively increasing the load that you're lifting with each exercise, as we just discussed, the other method of making a suspension system exercise more challenging is to vary the stability. So you're not actually increasing the load, you're just making it more challenging because maybe it's more unstable. And this could be accomplished by decreasing the base of support, using an unstable surface training surface, or increasing the stabilization requirements of the grip, hip, or shoulder scapula. And we'll talk through each of these now. So to begin with, base of support. So decreasing the base of support will increase the stabilization requirements and thereby making the exercise more challenging. And this may be achieved by, for example, lifting one foot off the ground for a chest press or a row, or in the case of the images below, by moving from a more stable plank position on the forearms, as we see on the left, to a plank on the hands. So in the initial, easier version, we have a greater surface area on the ground, i.e. the whole length of the forearm. In the harder version on the right hand side, it's just the hands. So everything else being equal, that decreased base of support will make the exercise more challenging. So for an increased stability challenge, many of the exercises can be performed on an unstable surface, such as a BOSU, stability ball, foam pad, stability disc, or wobble board. And this will usually increase the balance challenge, as well as the overload on the ankle, knee, and hip stabilizers if you're stood on the unstable surface, or the shoulder and thoracic stabilizers if the hands are holding onto it. So stabilization. So performing a plank with only 1 foot in the straps will increase the stress on the hip flexor and anterior core and make it more unstable and increase the stabilization requirements from the hip and core. Alternatively, performing a row with just one hand in the strap will overload the grip requirements of that hand and also provide a kind of rotational stress that, again, the core and the hips to a certain degree will have to counteract to keep the body in that neutral, rigid, straight position. So when we look at these and review these parameters, the intensity of suspension system exercises can be altered by increasing the lever length, changing the body angle from vertical to horizontal for kind of standing exercises, varying the pendulum swing force for more horizontal exercises, using additional loads such as free weights, leaving the ground, so making it more dynamic. The stability of suspension training exercises can be altered by changing the base of support, using an unstable training surface, or using a single strap, which is going to alter the stabilization requirements. So, objectives review. The objective of this presentation was to show how to manipulate the intensity or stability of different exercises and discuss parameters such as body angle, lever length, and the pendulum swing force. So you should complete the review questions for this section to ensure you met the learning outcomes, and then perform the guided learning practice, which in this case is 0.5 hours.